What do you mean we're losing customers at store 4? That location's supposed to be one of our busiest. Eli Monroe stood in his office downtown, staring at the latest numbers. Sales at one of his 9 Café locations had dropped sharply over the last 3 months. Reviews online mentioned long waits, rude staff, and one even mentioned the word hostile. Eli didn't like vague words. He liked facts. He'd inherited the Café chain from his father 3 years ago but had spent most of his time focusing on expansion and branding. The day-to-day. That was left to his district managers and store supervisors. He visited each location during the holidays, took photos with the staff, shook hands, but he didn't really know them. That was the problem. "Don't send anyone," Eli told his assistant. "I'll go myself. But I want to see what's really happening, not what people tell me is happening." He shaved his beard, dyed his hair a dark brown, and added a pair of fake glasses. With a company this size and high turnover at lower levels, he could walk in unnoticed. Most of the current staff had never met him in person. To them, he'd just be another trainee sent in by corporate. Store 4 sat at the edge of a busy commercial block. It had a large front window, a long counter, and a mismatched team of 10 employees. The store manager, Darren, was a sharp dresser with a loud voice and a clipboard that never left his hand. He introduced Eli, now going by Ethan, to the team. "This is Ethan. Corporate sent him for some hands-on training. He'll be shadowing shifts this week." "Don't scare him off." A few workers chuckled politely, but most kept their heads down. One girl with tired eyes nodded at Eli and offered a quiet "hey." Her name tag read Valerie. Eli was put on cleaning duty. It was perfect. He got to move around the café, observe quietly, and engage with coworkers in small, natural ways. Most of the crew was young. College students, part-timers, and one older man who looked like he'd been there a while. His name was Drew. Drew was tall, in his late 30s, and careful with everything he did. He always double-checked orders, always asked customers if they needed anything else. But when he spoke, his words came out slow, broken by a stutter. It didn't seem to slow him down much, until Darren walked by. Eli was wiping down the counter near the espresso machine when he heard it. Darren, I think this drink was missing." "Oh my God, Drew." "Spit it out, man," Darren snapped, rolling his eyes, loud enough for customers to hear. He turned to one of the girls behind the counter and muttered, "It's like training a dog to talk." Eli froze. The rag in his hand stopped moving. He looked at Valerie, who stood nearby, her jaw clenched. Drew stood still, blinking too fast. He looked down at the cup in his hand. "I'll fix it." "Yeah, do that," Darren said, walking off like nothing had happened. Eli felt his stomach turn. It wasn't just rude, it was cruel. And judging by the lack of reaction, it wasn't the first time. Later, in the break room, Eli sat beside Valerie during her 10-minute break. "Does that kind of thing happen often?" he asked casually. She looked at him, trying to gauge him. "You mean Darren? Yeah, he's got this thing about being efficient, thinks Drew slows us down." "Why doesn't anyone say something?" Valerie gave a dry laugh. "To who?" "District manager only shows up when the numbers drop. And nobody wants to lose hours. We've already got a staff shortage." "Why's that?" "People quit. Fast. We're down 2 baristas and a shift lead. Darren says he's selective about who he hires." "But honestly, people just don't like working here." Eli leaned back. His mind was racing. He knew this location had potential, but something was clearly broken, and it wasn't just about slow service or rude staff, it was about fear. Silence. The next day, he arrived early. Drew was already mopping the front floor. He looked up and gave a small nod. "Morning," Eli said. Drew smiled. "Gee, good morning." "Need help?" Drew hesitated, then handed him a second mop. Sure." They worked quietly for a moment, side by side. "You're good at your job," Eli said. Drew looked surprised. Thanks." Eli meant it. The guy paid attention, cared about the space, and treated every customer with respect. So why was he being treated like a joke? Eli knew he couldn't just call Darren out yet. He needed to see more. Make sure this wasn't a one-time thing. But deep down, he already knew it wasn't, and he was done watching from the sidelines. The following morning, Eli arrived 15 minutes before his scheduled shift. The air outside was brisk, the sidewalk still wet from the early morning drizzle. Inside, the café was quiet except for the steady whir of the grinder and the low hum of the fridge compressors. Valerie was behind the pastry case, stocking trays of croissants and muffins. She glanced up, surprised. "You're early." "Figured I'd get a head start," Eli replied. Valerie didn't ask questions. She moved aside so he could help arrange the display. They worked in silence for a while until the front door opened and Darren walked in, coffee already in hand. He barely acknowledged them. "Val, we're low on caramel again." "Did you forget to check the order last night?" "No," she said calmly. "I flagged the bottle yesterday and told Jess to add it to the list." "Well, it's not here, so either you didn't follow up or Jess didn't do her job. Either way, someone's not paying attention." He walked past, shaking his head. Valerie didn't respond. She just kept placing pastries. By mid-morning, the café was full students with laptops, parents with strollers, a few regulars who chatted briefly before settling in. Eli worked the dish station, rinsing cups and scrubbing milk pitchers. His hands were raw from the constant hot water, but he didn't mind. It gave him a reason to stay back and watch. What he saw made his chest tighten. Darren spent most of his time fiddling with his tablet or pointing out minor mistakes loudly, never once stepping in to help when the line backed up. At one point, he called out a trainee for not wiping down a table fast enough, even though there were 3 drinks piling up on the bar. When the trainee asked if she should help on the bar instead, Darren snapped, "Don't think. Just do what you're told." Eli kept his focus on the sink, but his jaw locked. At 11, Drew walked in for his shift. He greeted everyone quietly and went straight to the fridge to restock milk. A couple of customers waved at him, clearly they knew him. One even asked for him by name. "Hey, is Drew around? He always gets my drink right." Eli watched as Drew smiled and nodded, then got to work. He was fast, methodical, and handled the rush with calm precision, even when Darren barked out corrections that didn't make sense. "Don't tamp the espresso so hard," Darren said loudly. "You're wasting beans." Drew paused, looked at the puck in the portafilter, then continued anyway. The shots came out perfect. Eli saw it. So did the customer, but Darren wasn't done. "Seriously, just follow the manual. We're not running a boutique roastery here." Eli turned to Valerie when she passed by with a tray of mugs. "Does he ever actually jump in when it gets busy?" "Only when someone from corporate's visiting," she said under her breath. "Otherwise, he just circles like a hawk." By the end of the shift, Drew was wiping down the counters near closing time, hands moving slower than earlier. His shirt was damp with sweat, and his eyes were red from steam exposure. Eli approached him with a bucket. "I've got the front tables," Eli offered. Drew looked surprised, then gave a small nod. "Oh, okay, thanks." As they worked side by side again, Eli kept his tone light. "You ever think about applying for a lead position?" Drew didn't answer right away. He looked around, then leaned closer. I did. Last year. But Darren S. said IW wasn't leadership and material." Eli didn't respond. He didn't trust himself to. That night, Eli sat in his car outside the store, staring at the dashboard. He called his assistant. "I need a copy of the last 6 months of shift rosters for Store 4, he said. "And pull any HR reports involving Darren Ellis." He ended the call before she could ask questions. The next day, the atmosphere was tense from the moment he walked in. Valerie looked drained. Her apron was stained with syrup and she hadn't even started her shift yet. "What's going on?" Eli asked. "We're down again," she said. Jess called out. "Darren said no one's allowed to leave until close." "We're already short," Eli said. "Welcome to Tuesdays." Eli spent the next 6 hours toggling between the bar and the sink, trying to keep up. Customers grew testy. The printer kept jamming. At one point, a woman knocked over her latte and Darren blamed the barista for not handing it off fast enough. "I'm not going to apologize for someone else's clumsiness," he said when the customer complained. Eli stepped in, offered a refund and a new drink, and apologized sincerely. The woman left satisfied. Darren watched from the back, arms crossed. Later, when Eli was reloading syrup bottles, he overheard Darren talking to another supervisor in the office. "I don't care if they're tired," he was saying. "They're not here to be comfortable. If they wanted easy, they should have stayed in school." Eli turned, walked out of the storage room, and made a decision. The next morning, he arrived in his real clothes. No apron, no name tag, just a clean button-up, slacks, and the expression of someone with authority. The staff noticed immediately. Valerie's eyes widened. Drew froze mid-pour. Darren, who was on his phone behind the register, looked up and frowned. "Can I help you?" Eli stepped forward. "You can step into the office." Darren blinked. "I'm sorry," I said. "Office," Eli repeated, voice firm. Inside the office, Darren stood stiffly. "What's this about?" Eli shut the door. "My name is Eli Monroe. I own this company. I've been working here under the name Ethan for the last 4 days, and I've seen enough." Darren's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You've been..." "What?" "Sir, I don't lie," Eli said sharply. "I've heard how you speak to employees. I've seen how you treat Drew. How you avoid helping during rushes. How you blame others for your own poor planning. I've seen the turnover rate, the missed inventory, and the falsified break logs. You've created a hostile environment, and it ends today." Darren tried to recover. "You have to understand, managing a store like this, it's pressure. I'm just trying to keep things running. Sometimes you have to be tough." "Being tough is not the same as being abusive," Eli said. "You've humiliated staff in front of customers. You've ignored repeated requests for help. And you've disrespected someone with a speech disorder in a way that's legally and morally unacceptable." Darren's face flushed. "Look, maybe I pushed too hard, but firing me. That's extreme." "This isn't a discussion," Eli said. "You're done here. Pack your things." Darren didn't speak again. He left 30 minutes later without making eye contact with anyone. Eli gathered the remaining team. They stood in a loose semicircle near the back of the café, unsure what to expect. "I want to be transparent with all of you," Eli said. "I've been here undercover to understand what's been going wrong. I saw a team doing their best under impossible conditions. I saw commitment, effort, and kindness. And I also saw leadership that failed you." The room was quiet. Effective immediately, Darren is no longer with this company. We'll be bringing in a temporary manager from another location to stabilize the schedule while we promote from within. "Valerie, I want to talk to you about stepping into a lead role." And Drew, Eli turned to him. "Your attention to detail and your customer care are exactly what this brand stands for. If you're willing, I'd like to enroll you in our leadership development track, with support." "Real support?" Drew stared at him, stunned. I'd like that," he said quietly. Eli nodded once. "There will be more changes. Not just here, but across all locations. I've seen what happens when leadership forgets who keeps the doors open. And I won't make that mistake again." The team applauded softly, not out of politeness but relief. For the first time in a long time, they believed someone was listening. The café opened that morning to a steady trickle of customers. The smell of ground espresso clung to the air, and the worn floor tiles were still drying from Drew's early cleaning. Eli stayed in the back, sitting on a crate near the dry storage shelves, reviewing the previous month's employee schedules on his tablet. The numbers were worse than he'd thought. Darren had been assigning the same 3 workers to nearly every closing shift, 6 days a week, no rotations, no fair distribution. Valerie had logged 54 hours one week without a single overtime report filed. Another barista, Jess, had worked 6 consecutive doubles. And Drew. He'd been opening and closing 3 times per week, often with less than 12 hours between shifts. Eli closed the tablet and stood up. He wasn't going to fix burnout with words. These people needed relief and fast. But he also knew he couldn't pull in replacements overnight. Staffing took time and trust. Out front, Valerie was setting up the condiment station while a new shift lead from another store named Kendra reviewed the morning checklist beside her. Kendra had arrived quietly just after sunrise, corporate name badge clipped neatly to her polo, her demeanor calm and watchful. She and Eli had worked together for over 5 years. He trusted her to stabilize things without posturing. Eli stepped out just as Valerie dropped a stack of napkins. She knelt quickly, gathering them with one hand while holding the dispenser in the other. "Leave it," Eli said, crouching down beside her. "We'll grab a clean stack." Valerie hesitated, then let them go. He stood and handed her a fresh bundle. "You all right?" he asked. "I didn't sleep much," she said, not making eye contact. "Had a hard time winding down after yesterday. That's fair. If you need to take a shorter shift today, say so." She looked at him now. "Are you serious?" "Yes, but only if you want to." "You've already done more than expected." She gave a small nod, but didn't say anything else. Behind them, Drew adjusted the grinder burrs while Kendra double-checked the bean inventory. The two were already working in quiet sync, a good sign. Kendra looked up as Eli approached. "2 of your espresso bags are half air," she said. "Seals were broken." Eli frowned. "Toss them." "Already did." The morning rush hit shortly after 8. Eli joined the front register, running orders while Drew manned the bar. Kendra floated, jumping in where needed. Even with Darren gone, the tension hadn't fully lifted, but the team moved with more ease. Valerie kept pace, calling out names clearly, and no one flinched when the line stretched past the door. Still, the gaps showed fast. They were short one person on the floor. Eli noticed it when a family waited near the pickup counter for almost 10 minutes before anyone had a chance to clean their table. He grabbed a cloth and handled it himself. A man in his early 40s, watching from the window seat, raised an eyebrow. "You the new manager?" Eli gave a brief smile. "Something like that. You're the first person I've seen clean a table in here who didn't look miserable." Eli looked back toward the bar. Valerie was tying her apron tighter and Drew was refilling the ice bin. Nobody had stopped moving in over an hour. After the rush died down, Eli pulled Valerie aside by the staff lockers. "You're not paid to be a martyr. Sit for 10 minutes. I'll cover your station." She shook her head. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. You're exhausted." "That's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that something's been wrong here for a long time. You're not paid to fix it alone." She hesitated, then slowly unfastened her apron. 5 minutes. "That's it. Take 10. She sat in the break area, shoulders slumped but eyes still scanning the floor like she expected something to go wrong. Meanwhile, Kendra pulled Eli into the back hallway. "You need at least 2 new hires immediately," she said. "If you want this place to function without burning what's left of the staff. I know, I've already flagged it with HR, but we're not going to find qualified baristas overnight. Then start with character, train for skill." Eli nodded. "I'll write the job postings myself." Kendra paused. "Also, there was something else. I pulled old camera footage from last week. Darren deleted most of it, but a few clips were auto-backed up to the cloud. He was clocking out early 3 days a week and submitting edits through a bypass login. He was also removing write-ups before they posted." Eli's jaw tightened. "Document everything," he said. "We're going to file a formal report with legal." She nodded. "Already started." The day kept moving. Around noon, a new applicant walked in. She was tall, early 20s, with a small canvas folder in hand. Eli glanced over from behind the bar. "Here to apply?" he asked. The woman nodded. "I saw the post this morning, said you need floor staff. Name, Janelle." He stepped out and led her to a side table. "You have any café experience?" "None. I worked retail, grocery mostly, but I'm a fast learner and I can work weekends." He nodded. "Why'd you leave your last job?" "Manager kept scheduling me for Sundays even though I told her I couldn't work then for health reasons. When I brought it up, she cut my hours to 2 days." Eli looked at her. She didn't flinch under the pause. He stood. "Come back tomorrow at 6:30. Wear closed shoes. We'll train you on floor." She blinked. "Just like that, you'll start part-time. If it works, we'll bump your hours." She left with a look of cautious disbelief. Valerie passed her near the door. "New hire?" she asked. "Trial shift tomorrow." "Good, we need it." "Speaking of," Eli said, "I've been meaning to ask. You ever train new staff before?" Valerie shrugged. A few times, but it was always unofficial. Darren said I wasn't consistent enough. He gave a small shake of his head. He was wrong. She sat back down at the milk station. Then why didn't anyone notice? They did. They just didn't say anything because they didn't think it would matter. There was a silence between them then. Not awkward, just full. By 3, the lull had returned. The espresso machine hissed at intervals. Drew was restocking cups in the back when Eli joined him. "You've been quiet today," Eli said. Drew nodded once. "T trying to stay out of the way." "You don't have to." Drew paused, then leaned slightly on the shelf. "I've worked a lot of places," he said. Most managers, they see the stutter. T they D don't say it out loud, B but TH they treat you like why you're slow." Eli didn't interrupt. D Darren was the first one to say it out loud. He said I am made customers and nervous. Eli's hands curled into loose fists at his sides. "Do you want to move into a lead role here?" Drew hesitated. "I don't want to be in charge, B but I want TT to help." "You don't have to manage people to lead. You already do it every day." Drew looked down, unsure. "I'll put you on the training calendar," Eli said. "You'll help onboard the new hires. You set the tone here. It's time people saw that." Drew gave a slow nod. "Oh, okay." By closing, the team was dragging. Eli wiped down tables while Kendra counted the till. Valerie picked at a blister on her finger as she locked the supply cabinet. "Tomorrow's going to be rough," she muttered. "It'll be one step better than today," Eli said. "That's the goal." Her expression didn't change, but she didn't argue. After everyone clocked out, Eli stayed behind. He pulled up a new email draft and typed out the subject: Emergency Staffing Allocation Store 4. Then he listed the hours needed, the roles to fill, and the timeline. He ended it with one line: "We fix this now or we lose the staff we have left." The morning started quiet. Rain tapped lightly on the cafe windows, and the usual foot traffic was thin. Eli stood behind the register, reviewing the new training packets he'd personally rewritten the night before. They were simpler, more visual, and left space for notes. He wasn't interested in corporate jargon anymore. He wanted tools people could actually use. Janelle arrived 5 minutes early. She wore a black hoodie and jeans, her shoes still damp from the sidewalk. Valerie greeted her with a short nod and handed her an apron. No chatter, just movement. That was how the team worked now: deliberate, focused, still recovering. Kendra had stayed on for a few more days, helping balance the schedule. She'd managed to bring over another part-time barista from Store 2, a college senior named Mateo. He was quiet but fast, and more importantly, he listened. Eli had cleared it personally with the GM there, shifting some hours to cover the gap. Drew was already on bar. He didn't glance up when Janelle approached, just motioned for her to watch. Eli stood nearby, observing. "You watch the pour first," Drew said, eyes on the espresso shot. "Then why you try, and not too much pee pressure?" Janelle leaned in, nodding once, then stepped in when he moved aside. Her hands were unsure but steady. The shot came out watery. Drew didn't react, just reset the portafilter and nodded for her to try again. Eli walked over to Valerie, who was breaking down boxes near the dry storage. "How's she doing so far?" he asked. "She's paying attention," Valerie said, flattening a cardboard panel. "That's more than most did. You good to shadow her for the rest of the morning?" "I can, but only for an hour. I've got to prep cold bar before the second rush." "I'll take over after that." Valerie paused, then added, "I think Drew's doing better with her than I would anyway." "He's a steady hand," Eli agreed. "No," she said, picking up another box. "He's patient." "That's different." By late morning, the floor had picked up. A group of realtors came in together, followed by a delivery driver needing a large to-go order. Eli grabbed an apron and jumped in, helping bag drinks while Mateo handled register. Janelle stayed on Drew's hip, watching every move, asking only when she needed to. The flow was smoother than it had been in weeks. Still tight, still stretched, but not falling apart. At noon, Eli gathered the full team in the back hallway. He stood by the lockers, holding a small stack of envelopes. The fluorescent light above them buzzed faintly. "I want to speak plainly," he began. You've all carried more than you should have, without complaint, without recognition. That ends now. He handed an envelope to Valerie first. Your title is now officially shift supervisor, he said. Pay increase included. You'll set your own training hours and you'll work directly with me on scheduling. Valerie looked at the envelope but didn't open it. Why now? She asked. Because there's no excuse for how long it took to recognize what you've been doing. She gave a small nod but said nothing more. Eli turned to Drew. You'll be our new staff trainer. It's not a title we've used before, but I'm creating it for you. Your shifts will be adjusted to allow time for onboarding, and you won't be asked to cover opens and closes in the same week again. Ever. Drew's hands tightened slightly around the towel he was holding. I appreciate that, he said, slow but clear. Janelle glanced over at him, surprised. Eli caught it. You learning a lot from him? He asked. She nodded. Yeah, he doesn't rush me, that's the goal. He handed another envelope to Mateo. Temporary transfer bonus. You've stepped into a spot no one else wanted midweek, that matters. Mateo gave a quiet thanks. Eli looked around at the group. This team has been bleeding good people for too long. That stops here. You're not disposable. You're the reason this store still has a shot. I'm not going to pretend these changes fix everything. They don't, but they're a start. He didn't ask for applause. He just stepped back and let them return to work. By mid-afternoon, things had shifted again. A woman in a corporate blazer walked in, clipboard in hand. Her name was Cheryl, one of the company's HR compliance officers. She'd been briefed on Darren's termination and was here to conduct follow-up interviews. Eli brought her into the back office and reviewed the summary with her. He manipulated time sheets, deleted disciplinary records, and made discriminatory remarks in front of customers and staff. We're filing formal notice with legal. Cheryl flipped through her notes. There's precedent for this. Based on what you've submitted, we'll finalize the termination with cause. He won't be eligible for rehire internally or through any franchised location. That's not enough, Eli said. We're also flagging his name in the industry database. If he applies anywhere that runs standard background, it'll trigger. He nodded slowly. Good. Cheryl left after an hour, satisfied with the documentation. Eli didn't tell the team. They didn't need to hear Darren's name again. Later that evening, as the last customers left, Janelle pulled her apron off and approached Drew. Thanks for walking me through everything, she said. I've had managers who just throw you in. Drew wiped down the counter, then looked at her. You did good today. Jay just keep asking. She smiled, then looked at Eli. He always like this, Eli nodded. Even when no one's watching. After cleanup, Valerie lingered by the back door. Eli was locking the register drawer. You're not going to disappear again, are you? She asked. No, because it's easier to care when the person in charge does too. He met her eyes. I'll be back every week, sometimes working, sometimes just watching, but I won't be distant again. She gave a small nod and pushed the door open. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streetlights cast long reflections on the wet pavement as the staff filtered out, one by one. Eli stayed behind, standing in the empty café. The floor was clean. The machines were off, and for the first time in months, the silence didn't feel like something was broken. It felt like something had been repaired, not finished. Not perfect, but finally, honestly, on the way.